Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Jordan Odell. I'm the owner of Transcend Wellness Chiropractic. I'm a chiropractor and I have some focuses in neurology and functional medicine. I'm super excited about the topic today. So, I'm going to be talking about how your gut microbiome is contributing to your weight gain. So, I know a lot of people, when they're trying to get their health under control, typically their weight is things their primary care physicians are talking about, other practitioners, there's tons of stuff online, but what's really not being talked about is how your gut microbiome is contributing to your weight gain or the struggle to lose weight. So that's what I'm going to address today and kind of inform you guys, but also give some really cool tips. So let's get started. So overview. So some topics we're going to cover throughout this next 15-ish minutes. What is a microbiome? How does the microbiome affect weight gain, ways you can tell if your microbiome is affecting your inability to lose weight, and some simple tips to start improving your microbiome to start helping you lose weight. All right, so before we get too far into it, I figured I'd let you guys know a little bit about myself. So obviously, I'm a chiropractor at this point, what I focus in, but some things about myself. I love my career. I love being able to be my own boss and have creativity like I'm doing with this video and the slides and really educate my patients. That's a big part of what I do. Other things, my dog Billy, she's a little Frenchie. Right now she's about 11 months old and loves to poop in the house, so that's fun. Exercising, so sports has always been a big part of my life, and then outdoors, so I'm pretty much obsessed with traveling and hiking. All right, enough about me. Okay, so what is a microbiome? So your microbiome is actually this ecosystem of bacteria, funguses, viruses, even parasites, sometimes. And it's actually interesting. Most people don't realize, though, that majority of the population has parasites. They're not all bad, but they're definitely not all good. So this whole ecosystem of all these friends taking up, the space in your gut, they are what make up your microbiome. They're what keep our gut healthy. They're what keep our immune system healthy. These guys have so many functions, and yet we're still learning about them. It's not super talked about, but they play such important roles, and this is what I'm helping my patients with constantly is their gut health. So getting this whole ecosystem in a really good, healthy state, because it's easy for it to kind of become imbalanced, and a lot of times that's from our lifestyle that we're living, and that's kind of what I'm going to get into, so you guys have an understanding too of, okay, if I know what my microbiome is, well, how do I keep it healthy, but also what am I doing that's potentially causing it to be, out of balance. But this is what your microbiome is. All right, so why is your microbiome so important? Well, real quick. All right, so your microbiome is so important because these bacteria and this whole kind of balance of friends in there in your gut, they will help with the absorption of nutrients. They will basically help with turning genes on or off. So a lot of people think, oh, I have these genetics, I'm screwed, I'm going to have Alzheimer's. No. That's not necessarily the case. We have something called epigenetics in our life, whereas basically our environment is what turns genes on or off. And part of that environment is going to be our gut bacteria being healthy. So other things these microbiome do and these bacteria is they help break down food. So the way that we break down food and absorb the nutrients we need, a big part of it is these guys helping us out. And fun fact too, right? If you experience gas, it's not you creating the gas, it's your bacteria friends creating things like methane and causing the gas, which I'll dive into that at different points of gas being kind of a negative symptom and excessive gas not being normal. All right, so the other thing that these guys do is they train your immune system. So why this is so important is because we need to have this checks and balances of, okay, we need to know who the good guys are, and we need to know who the bad guys are so we can keep them out and keep this whole system in balance. And so we're living in an age where autoimmune diseases just seem to be rampant. And one of the things that keeps coming up in research, and we keep research and studying why, and what keeps kind of being at the forefront is our gut health driving these issues. We've basically been living and kind of too clean of a world, breaking down our gut microbiome, not allowing for enough diversity, and not eating the healthiest foods. A great cocktail to create a storm in our gut. So the next thing that our microbiome does is they will help us actually synthesize enzymes, vitamins, and hormones. Why this is important. So a lot of our internal mechanisms take certain enzyme reactions. This enzyme creates this, goes to the next thing, enzyme creates that, goes to the next thing. So we need these enzymes, which are proteins, to help us with all of our internal self-signaling processes, organ function. So really important. Other thing is vitamins. Interesting, we don't make things like B vitamins, vitamin K. Pretty much most of our vitamins, like, we don't make. We have to get them from food, or get them from things like our bacteria helping to synthesize them. So I'm going to go in a little bit deeper later on, but yeah, vitamins, like, we have to have healthy gut bacteria to actually make B vitamins, and things like vitamin K. So these are really important to all of our other cellular processes, which is why, like, people have certain types of anemia. So let's say anemia where you're vitamin B12, or I believe it's B9 or B6 deficient. But anyways, that type of anemia, right? If you're not getting enough B12, which is coming from outside sources and from these gut bacteria, you could be having anemia problems, which means you're not getting enough oxygen to your tissues, and you're not getting enough nutrient transport to your tissues. So important there. And then hormones. Yes, these guys actually help us make our hormones as well. So that's a little bit there. There's more to come. Yeah, I know you're getting probably excited about this. All right, so there are fighters. So these guys, because everyone in our gut is competing for space, these good bacteria, they're fighting off other guys that are trying to get in and take over that shouldn't be there, that aren't helping with keeping our gut lining healthy, aren't helping keep our immune system healthy, and aren't kind of keeping this symbiotic relationship we have with these guys. So they're fighting off guys for us. Our gut bacteria help create what's called short-chain fatty acids. These are super important for cellular function within the gut. So everything that's going to keep our gut lining, the cells in there healthy, is going to partly be from these short-chain fatty acids being created. The next thing these guys do, they help with balancing the pH. So a lot of people don't realize, I know we see a lot of products that say alkaline water and things promoting alkalinity. Well, the thing is, different parts of our body need different kinds of pH balance. So like our gut, our urinary tract, they're going to have higher acidity, and there's a good reason for that, because certain bacteria and other not so good friends can grow in more alkaline environments. So we need a certain amount of acidity to help keep good bacteria there. And when pH gets thrown off and people are too alkaline, that's one of the things that leads to dysbiosis. And dysbiosis is when we have this whole ecosystem being out of balance. So there's not as many of the good guys helping us, and there's more of the bad guys. That's dysbiosis. Other things this microbiome bacteria do, they neutralize cancer-causing compounds. Crazy. All right, so now that you guys have an idea of how important these friends are within our gut, I know you were curious, okay, well, about these guys, how do they basically contribute to my weight gain? So our next portion, how do they affect weight gain? So what's been found in research is research has been able to show with almost 90% accuracy, based on somebody's gut bacteria they have, they can tell just based on the gut bacteria with 90% accuracy if someone is potentially going to have weight problems and be obese, or if someone is going to be more lean. So there's actually bacteria that is seen way more frequently in the leaner population. And then there's bacteria and other infections that are seen higher in obese or overweight population. So typically, we're going to get weight gain when we have bad bacteria and we have low diversity. So we want to have basically this very abundant and diverse and fruitful amount of bacteria in our gut. The more the better, and that's what research shows, that when people have a lower diversity, it's linked to other diseases and issues, whereas people with a higher diversity typically have better health. What else also is going to be affected by having more bad bacteria is typically you will get yeast overgrowth. It's normal for us to have a certain amount of yeast that help us with our digestion and all the functions that go on in the gut, but an overgrowth of yeast can cause serious issues. And clinically, this is probably the number one thing that I see most common in patients is coming in with things like candida overgrowth in their gut. And that can present as other skin issues like eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, can all be also linked to yeast overgrowth. But yeah, so that's one of the first things I am typically addressing with a lot of patients is getting this yeast down to a healthy level in the system. And that in turn seems to also help the good bacteria be able to also repopulate. So other things. You'll have certain bad bacteria they've found in research that will increase a hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin is this hormone that basically increases our appetite and increases fat deposition, so actually increases fat in the body. So it's there because, again, all these things are checks and balances. We're meant to have a certain amount of fat in our body, but too much isn't good. So when we have bad bacteria that are increasing this ghrelin hormone, that means I'm going to potentially be hungrier, eating more calories than I actually need for what I'm burning, and I'm actually depositing more fat into the cells. So this is another way that your microbiome is playing a role in your potential weight gain or inability to lose weight. Another interesting thing with the bacteria, so you can have, if we aren't transiting right food out at a certain speed, typically we're supposed to, once we eat a meal, it should be out of us within 12 to 24 hours. So that means if we're eating 3 meals a day, we should be pooping about 3 times a day. Most people, though, aren't pooping 3 times a day, and typically it seems like women especially are going once a day if they're lucky. Well, slower transit time through the gut means we absorb more calories than we probably actually need. So what they found in research too is that certain bad bacteria will slow transit time of food through the gut and will actually absorb more calories from our food. So if we repopulate or get better bacteria, we can actually get a little less calories than what we're needing. The other thing on the flip side, so if you think about consuming too many calories, well, then there's also the potential for malnutrition from our gut bacteria. So we can have, if we have basically unhealthy bacteria that aren't the ones that are helping us assimilate, our vitamins that we're needing for all these processes in our body, because again, micronutrients are one of the most foundational, most important parts of why we need fruits and vegetables. That's where a lot of our micronutrients come from, and how we end up getting our vitamins and minerals are, the micronutrients essentially. But these bad bacteria will stop us from absorbing what we need to. So oftentimes when I see patients come in and they're complaining of it's hard for them to lose weight, the first thing I'm checking on, and we'll get into this in the next bit, but is their symptoms. Because it's kind of like, how can you tell if your gut microbiome is causing weight gain? And I might as well just skip on to this next one. So there's no 100% way to point and say exactly my gut microbiome is the exact cause of my weight gain. But what we've seen and what I can say based on my clinical experience is, okay, well, ask the question, do you have symptoms of dysbiosis? Because again, the dysbiosis, which is going to be the gut friends that aren't in a healthy balance anymore, they are oftentimes going to be the contributor for holding on to weight or struggling to lose weight. And actually, one of the biggest reasons I didn't even touch on in this last slide, so I apologize, but what the biggest issue with the weight gain is actually ends up coming down to blood sugar control issues. So when we have dysbiosis, we typically will end up with gut lining that starts to break down. So we have on the other side of our gut lining about 70% of our immune system. Our immune system is what causes inflammation, and inflammation is good, but it can also be not good when it's over the top. And so what happens when we get dysbiosis, starts breaking down the gut lining. pathogens like the bacteria, but also food proteins, can start going through that gut lining into our blood barrier where they shouldn't be. And your immune system recognizes them and thinks, oh, they're bad, they're foreign. So then your immune system will start to create all this inflammation to go after what it thinks is, these attacking infections, when really it's just food proteins or some of the bacteria from your gut. Well, this inflammation goes systemic and it starts affecting your fat tissues, your muscle tissues, your liver tissues. And what happens, because it's a lot of times macrophages, which is a certain type of immune cell, but some other immune cells that start doling the insulin receptors on these tissues. So what happens when we have insulin receptors that get doled? It's basically like if let's say, so insulin is what takes glucose. So when we eat food, we oftentimes will convert whether it's carbohydrates, protein, or fats into glucose. The insulin will take glucose into the cell so the cell can make energy. And that's how we get to keep living our life, keep healing, all these other processes working in our body. So this mechanism is super important, but it's also the mechanism that affects our weight loss and weight gain. So essentially, if you have dysfunctioning insulin receptors, it's like I came to bring you a present, I'm knocking on your door, and you might be inside, but you're like, I'm not going to open up the door. So now you can't get your present, you can't be all happy and joyful and enjoy it, like our cells are essentially taking in this glucose to make energy, happy, joyful. So now you have basically these dulled insulin receptors, we're not getting glucose into the cell. Well, this is now going to affect how your body gains or loses weight. So that's why when we work on our gut health and we start decreasing how reactive the immune system is, decreasing that inflammation in the system, you can start reversing this dullness of the insulin receptors, and basically start getting your metabolism and things firing better with the cells to allow for when that metabolism goes up, you're able to burn more. You're able to lose the weight. So it's kind of like we don't have enough energy to allow for those actions to happen. The body's not going to let weight come off. When we're in like burning mode, we have our, cells are utilizing energy how they're supposed to. Then we start pulling from our fat stores to use as energy. So this is how basically, so when we affect the gut microbiome by making it healthier, we affect the gut lining permeability, so making a stronger gut lining so things can't pass through now, overstimulate the immune system, leading to the insulin receptors getting dulled and then the weight loss dysfunction. So how do you know if you have symptoms of dysbiosis? All right, so symptoms, all right, overweight is one of them right off the bat that is potentially letting you know you have dysbiosis. Gas, so excessive gas. It's in research, they show that there are a certain amount of times that's normal for farting. And I would even say, based on the research, I'm curious what kind of population they're using. Are they healthy or are they not healthy? But basically, excessive gas is not healthy. And it means you have not so good gut friends going on. Bloating after, let's say, eating, or maybe towards the end of the day, you just start noticing this bloat that wasn't there before. Constipation or diarrhea. Sometimes it's a mix of both. Heartburn. Feeling of food sitting in your stomach. Pooping less than, I would say, 2 times a day. Fatigue, so energy issues. Getting that midday crash or not feeling super awake when you start your day. Abdominal pain. Nausea. Iron deficiency. Rashes, eczema, psoriasis, and chronic UTIs. So if you struggle with any of these, maybe a few of them, you potentially have dysbiosis that is affecting your weight gain. Now, if you're kind of like, okay, well, yeah, I have some of those symptoms, but how do I know, like, if there's things that I've done that have caused dysbiosis? All right, so some common causes, things that will actually lead to your gut bacteria and ecosystem getting changed for the not good way, is going to be if you've taken, let's say, antibiotics. Antibiotics will kill off bacteria, changing the pH and allowing things to start to overgrow. The next one is proton pump inhibitors. So for everyone out there who has heartburn or stomach upset and they're taking Tums, not not good. And the reason is because you'll start getting overgrowth of bad bacteria because the pH is too alkaline. So you start getting overgrowth in the small intestine, leading to things like SIBO in that small intestine, so bacteria that shouldn't be there. NSAIDs, Advil, ibuprofen, they start making your lining weaker. So now bacteria and food proteins can start going through that gut lining, overstimulating the immune system. Birth control pills. So excess estrogen will actually, they've seen, cause dysbiosis and can lead to, that potential for weight gain from the gut being dysfunctional. Chemotherapy. So a lot of times people who get chemo will end up with autoimmune issues later on, and they're realizing in the research that this could be tied to basically when you get chemotherapy, it doesn't just kill the cancer cells, it's also killing off microbial cells, so those good bacteria. Corticosteroids. So the common population for this might be someone with asthma or allergies who is having to take these. And what ends up happening is you suppress the good bacteria and you end up promoting more fungal species. And that, again, dysbiosis, all the issues begin. Artificial sweeteners. So look at what you're eating and drinking. Too much sugar and fat. Honestly, it's more the combo. Fat is actually good for you, and I could do a whole talk just on that. But too much sugar and fat can stimulate a lot of inflammation, but also feed the bad bacteria and other friends in there. Alcohol is a big one. So it only takes, for women, 1 alcoholic beverage a night, and for men, 2 alcoholic beverages a night to start causing dysbiosis. Stress. It's not just bad for you, it's bad for your gut friends. And the reason for this is it changes the mucus production within your gut, basically driving the diversity of the gut in a different direction, usually towards the bad side. And then if you've had other infections, so other infections can cause the dysbiosis to also occur. Maybe you went on a cruise, ate some food, had the I don't want to say the shits, but basically we're super sick the rest of the time. So something like a simple event like that can kick off a cascade of dysbiosis after that. So think about, some of these things. And if you're questioning it, there's some things you can start doing right now to start helping your gut. And they may seem simple. It may be what you hear constantly. But this, over time, this is what heals your gut. Yes, when people are so far one way, sometimes they need a little bit more intervention. And that's kind of where I come in with helping people, is kicking out some of the bad friends, getting that gut lining to heal even quicker. And sometimes there's even past what I can do. And people who are really doing all the things, seen a lot of functional medicine doctors, tried the herbs, and they're still struggling, sometimes they end up going to things like fecal transplants, which is actually really cool. But most of the people, if they start with these simple steps, they can start making huge changes in their gut health and eventually how their body is responding to weight changes. So most patients I recommend, because typically with the bad bacteria and usually people having yeast overgrowth, avoiding grains and sugars. So cut out the wheat products, cut your sugar intake down significantly. And I recommend usually when people make these changes, be consistent for at least a month. See how you're feeling and doing, because if you're noticing positive changes, why stop? So avoiding grains like wheat, a lot of times rice, oats, even quinoa. So leaving those guys out. And then more veggies and fruits. If these good guys are feeding on our veggies and fruits, they're not just benefiting us, they're benefiting them, which is then in turn benefiting us. We need to be eating more of them. My recommendation would be trying it. If you're having 3 meals a day, if you can, half your plate be veggies. If you can't do that, start with just a tiny portion with each meal and work your way up into it. More fiber in your diet. So that's part of why the veggies feed these guys, is they love fiber. So lentils, beans, oats can be, but again, it depends. If you have yeast overgrowth, I might say stay away from oats, but oats is a good source of fiber. Nuts, apples, flaxseed. So figure out a way to get natural fibers in. If you're stressed and you're struggling to eat throughout the day, okay, maybe start with a fiber supplement. And as you keep on going on your health journey, you can get into more solid food-based sources for fiber. Exercise actually will help change your gut microbiome diversity, and it'll actually help with motility, so getting food and things moving, better transit time. Avoiding processed foods. This is a huge one. The bad guys literally feed on all the extra crap that's in the processed foods, that basically processed anything that's bagged, anything that's in a can. So avoiding these things as much as you can. How you can also kind of offset, if let's say you like to have some of these things, eat more veggies and fruits. So with that, let me go on. So I talked about, okay, what can cause dysbiosis. So how to start improving your gut microbiome. So here are the things I kind of went over, and you'll obviously get to kind of come back to the slide deck if you need to. If you have any questions, based on what I went over, feel free to shoot me an email. If you like the content and you want to keep learning more, I'm going to keep posting these YouTube vlogs, as well as my Instagram has some shorter clips, but still really great information on health tips. So thank you guys for your time, and I look forward to seeing you at my next video vlog.